Hi, welcome or welcome back to 500 Hobbies. My name is Amanda, and this is the place on the internet where I talk all about my hobbies. So, where I live in the Midwestern United States, we are getting to my favorite part of the year, which I think I share with a lot of other fiber arts crafters, which is fall. So, the temperatures are dropping where we are, it's just perfect weather. The leaves are changing, and I'm just craving a really comfy, cozy, oversized cast on. But I know that I cannot cast anything more on until I finish my gift knits. So, to kind of scratch this itch that I'm having for now, I thought it would be fun to do a little pattern roundup of knit items in this category, in the hopes that I could live vicariously through some of you if you cast them on, and to kind of think about what I might cast on after the gift knit season is done. So maybe sometime in the new year, I will pick one of these to cast on. So I have 8 patterns to share with you today, and we'll kind of take it from what I consider to be the easiest or most manageable for beginner knitters up into ones that are a little bit more difficult with color work or some small cables. I also have one item that is not a sweater, which I'm really interested in trying, but uses a technique that I have not tried yet. So we'll talk about that too. The first pattern I want to talk about today is the Claude sweater. This is by the designer Kolibri by Johanna. I've knit up a ton of her designs, starting with the Camille sweater, which is one of the first ones that I knit when I was getting kind of serious about knitting, up until the Andes tee earlier this year, and hopefully the Pierre sweater maybe sometime in the new year. This is knit in an Aran weight yarn, so it's a little bit bulkier, and I think a little bit cozier because of that. The recommended yarn are 2 from Lana Grossa, so you'll hold a mohair and a wool yarn held double. Of course, if you feel you're sensitive to mohair, and this will be true for all the patterns in this video, and I think just in general, you can always find just an Aran weight yarn that matches gauge if you're sensitive to it. I consider this more on the beginner side of things because it's entirely knit flat, and a lot of us start knitting flat when we start to learn, and it's entirely in garter stitch, which is pretty basic, so you'll mostly be working knit stitches throughout the garment. So you'll start by working the front piece, the back piece, and then the sleeves, and then seaming them up. And your end result, I think, will actually be pretty similar to what I'm wearing today, where you have these balloon sleeves that kind of taper down into the wrist, and I think it's like a really nice, cozy, oversized detail. Up next, we have another Aran weight knit. This is the Aran Gallant sweater by Caidree, who is a designer I've followed for a long time, but I've never knit up any of her patterns, so maybe this one will be the one. So similar to the last one we talked about in terms of yarn, what's recommended is holding a mohair and then a bulkier weight wool held together. And that'll create this really nice halo effect, and I think make it really warm and cozy. I would consider this an advanced beginner pattern because while it's not knit flat, it is knit in the round. This is a basic raglan construction, which I think is a really good entry point for people who are trying to get into knitting sweaters in the round in a sort of seamless design, which I really like because I hate seaming. So a raglan, if you've ever seen sweaters that have kind of this seam on the side here, that would be a raglan construction. So I think it's really great for beginners because basically you cast on the yoke stitches and then increase down until you split into the sleeves. So you get really good at these basic making one left, making one right, which is a really important skill for you to have going forward. And it's also work in stockinette all the way down. And unlike when you're working flat, when you're working in the round, stockinette is just knit stitches forever. So I think that this is a really good advanced beginner. So maybe after you've finished with your Claude sweater, you can cast this one on. Up next, I want to talk about the Matcha jumper. I first found out about this pattern because I'm an avid watcher slash listener of by Emwu, which is another knitting podcast here on YouTube that I really recommend. So Marianne, who runs that podcast, actually knit this up as part of the test knit for the designer Vert knit. So it was really fun to kind of see that process. And then she liked the pattern so much that she ended up doing a second one. And I think that is just a really great stamp of approval, and also has made me want one of my own for a while. This is a really nice, oversized, cozy sweater that I think really fits into the category of today. It has this nice mock neck, which I think is really flattering on me, and is a little cropped, but of course you could modify that if that's not your style. In terms of yarn, this is a little bit lighter weight than the last two patterns we talked about. So what's recommended here is a silk mohair held double with a cotton merino blend to create a DK weight fabric. For me personally, I think this is a really good candidate for the classic knitting for olive merino and soft silk mohair, which is the yarn combination that I am wearing today, actually. This is third on my list in terms of difficulty. We would consider this about advanced beginner to intermediate, and that's really because of the German short row technique that's needed to shape the yoke. This was a technique that I think I was really afraid of for a long time because it seems kind of daunting. But I think with the help of YouTube, if you have like one or two sweaters under your belt already, I think it's really doable. And now that I know how to do them, I'm not really sure what I was so afraid of. So you'll start with the yoke and do those German short rows, which basically will create some fabric in one specific place, or more fabric in one place to help with the neck shaping. And then you'll knit down until you split for the sleeves and the body, and then you can just finish off in the rounded stockinette. So I think it's really just the German short rows that would make me think that this is a little bit more difficult than the other patterns we've talked about. But yeah, I think this is a really good candidate for the theme of today, and I am confident that I will cast this on at some point, if not this season. Up next, we'll talk about a pattern that you've probably come across if you are on knitting Instagram at all. This is the Lakes Pullover by Ozetta. This pattern is a little bit older. It came out in 2022. And in terms of difficulty, I would kind of put it in the same bucket as the Matcha jumper. The construction is somewhat similar, where you'd cast on the yoke, complete some German short rows, have a saddle shoulder shaping, and that always trips me up. And then split for the sleeves and knit the body down. In terms of differences, I think that the difference in neckline between the Matcha jumper and the Lakes Pullover really just makes a big difference in terms of the design. This is also a bit of a heavier sweater, so you would end up with a worsted weight yarn instead of the DK weight, which the Matcha jumper uses. This is a combination of mohair and wool as well. I think that's just kind of a popular combo. People are really into mohair these days. So if you are looking for kind of a heavier version, I think this is a really good option. Next, we have what I would consider kind of an elevated raglan design, the Un sweater. So similar to the previous raglan sweater we talked about, you'd cast on at the neckline and then do increases to create that raglan seam. But this time you're also going to work a folded collar, which I think looks a lot more professional. And if you've been following along, is something that I've only recently learned. Apart from that design, we also have these longer cuffs for the ribbing, which will go with the large amount of ribbing that you'll do for kind of the high split on the side of the sweater. And I think these are just really small design changes that I think are really manageable for advanced beginners or intermediate knitters, but they make the design look so much different from just a basic raglan. And I really like this design. I could see wearing it with jeans on a coffee date or something, Or if you make it a little bit longer, you could just wear it with legging and boots, which is a favorite look of mine during the season. This is a worsted weight sweater, so it's kind of in between the bulkier versions and the lighter versions that we've talked about. Similar to other sweaters we've talked about today, what's recommended is holding a mohair and a wool yarn double. So I think this is a really nice oversized raglan that you could work if you were looking to do something a little bit different, but are not quite ready to do like lace work or color work techniques quite yet. So these last three patterns that we'll talk about today, I would put more in the advanced bucket in terms of difficulty, mostly because they require techniques that I don't think are the very first things that you would learn as a knitter, and some of which me, a 5-year knitter, 5-year series knitter, have not tried yet. So for the first of these three, I'll talk about the sweater number 15. This is by My Favorite Things Knitwear, who I think has a lot of beautiful designs, none of which I've knit before, mostly because I don't think my skills have been up to the challenge quite yet. But sweater number 15 is a crew neck sweater that has these really small, delicate cables that go throughout the sweater. I would consider this a little bit of a challenge for me. I've done a few cables on scarves and things like that, but I have never done a full sweater, although it has been on my list ever since I saw the first Knives Out, when everyone is really obsessed with Chris Evans' sweater. This is a DK weight sweater, so a little bit lighter, similar to other things that we've talked about today. We're looking at a mohair wool combination. I think the Knitting for Olive combo would probably be what I'd lean for. It has a drop sleeve construction. I think it's really classic and nicely oversized. I could see wearing it casually or dressing it up a little bit with a skirt and tights for the winter. So I could see this being a really nice closet staple. Up next, we have the sweater that actually inspired me to make this pattern roundup because it just looks so oversized and cozy and has been all over my knitting socials. This is the Porcelain sweater. So you can see the color work, I think, is a little daunting to me. I've really only done really basic color work before. And the more that I watch other people do it, the more I don't think that I did it right the first time. But you can see that this sweater is really reminiscent of those really beautiful vases that you can see in like fancy furniture stores, or actually local to us, we have a Polish pottery shop, which features a lot of hand-painted pottery that I think I could draw a lot of inspiration from to work this sweater. It has a really nice folded neckline and just looks really oversized and comfy, and I could live in it. The yarn weight here is a DK, so it's a little bit lighter. What's recommended is a mohair wool combo from Sandnes Garn, which is a yarn brand that I feel like a lot of people recommend in their patterns, but I have not tried yet. I think it's a little bit difficult to get in the United States, but I think it is one that I would like to try. So this is the one that I am most confident that I will cast on after my gift knit season is over. Now, the very last pattern I want to talk about today is actually from Sandnes Garn, and these are felted slippers. So from what I can tell, you'll use a bulky wool yarn to knit up the slippers, and you'll make them way larger than your foot is supposed to be. And then you'll put them in the dryer and then continuously run them in there until they felt to your appropriate size. So I saw someone do this on YouTube last winter. If I can find the video, I'll link it below. And I thought that was a really cool use of what I typically consider the worst case scenario when you're putting something in there that you've knitted. So I thought it was really interesting to kind of like use this power for good instead of evil. And it was kind of coming off of my husband felting one of my sweaters without the intention to do so. So I think this could also be a really nice knit because I think it should go fairly fast using the bulky yarn, and also because they're just accessories instead of a whole sweater. So I think they're a really good option there for those reasons as well. I kind of put this toward the end of the difficulty spectrum just because I think, well, A, I've never done it before, and B, I think it can be a little unpredictable, the felting process. So from the video that I saw, you basically have to check on it continuously and continuously to make sure that they are not going to felt too much and be unusable for you because they're too small. Okay, so those are the 8 patterns that I wanted to share today. I hope that I gave you a little bit of knitting inspiration, and I'll get to see people cast on these really comfy, cozy sweaters before I get the chance to in January. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.